Remember when heavy metal ruled our lives? When great albums and great concerts came out every month?
Yeah, the 80s.
Well, it's time to look back at those days, so take out your old vinyl
And cassettes.
put on your denim jacket.
And raise your fist in the air.
It's time for the 80s Metal Hang, a classic heavy metal podcast.
Oh, yeah.
This week, on the one-year anniversary of his passing, we look back at the legendary life of Ozzy Osbourne in the 1980s. We will discuss all the albums, all the tours, and all the musicians in the first decade of his amazing solo career.
And although it's July, it's summer, and the sun is out, we're going to dive into the Prince of Darkness,
Yes, that's right.
the madman of rock and roll.
And I mean, this, in one 40-minute episode, there's probably, no way to cover everything. But since we are an 80s themed podcast, we're just going to focus on his solo career in that decade. So we all know where he came from. We all know that he was in Black Sabbath in the 70s. But after the Never Say Die tour in April of 79, he was fired.
Yes. He was on the first 8 Black Sabbath albums, and he had, obviously a lot of drug and alcohol problems. So I guess they had enough of his shenanigans and had to let him go.
Which is always strange because, the other 3 guys had problems too. It's not like they're preaching to him a healthy lifestyle. But it was Bill Ward who supposedly actually did the deed of telling him he was out. So he played his last show in December of 78 with Sabbath. And then by April of 79, he is bandless.
And he was kind of upset and depressed, but like a lot of things in life, you look at the open doors that happen when your door closes. So it's a great thing that he got booted from Black Sabbath because he's legendary. We're doing a podcast just on him.
Yeah, and it was a rough start at the beginning. Sabbath beat him to the punch with getting Dio and coming out with an album first, and Ozzy was looking for musicians around L.A. and then in England, and then he thankfully finds Randy Rhoads from L.A. as his guitar player, Bob Daisley on bass, who had played with Rainbow on the Long Live Rock and Roll album and tour, and then drummer Lee Kerslake from Uriah Heep.
That's the thing you're going to see about Ozzy from now on, is that he always has these super groups. He doesn't get regular session players or average players. He gets top-notch guys. Look at his guitar players he's had. He's had Randy Rhoads, Jakey Lee, Brad Gill, Zakk Wylde. He even had George Lynch in the band for 2 minutes.
Yeah, and so his early success lets him have the pick of the litter, so to speak, and is able to get all these guys. But I don't know if anyone would have predicted that a guy who was in Rainbow, a drummer from Uriah Heep, and an unknown guitar player would have come out with the legendary Blizzard of Oz album.
I know. And Bob Daisley, he's just a great bass player.
And then the Blizzard of Oz album, comes out, and it, has all the classics. I Don't Know, Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, Suicide Solution.
And D it has, which was a classical guitar interlude, which Randy wrote about his mother.
Yes, and we showed off the classical guitar skills that he had. It wasn't just a metal
Such
shredder.
A good boy.
Such a good boy. Wrote a song for his mommy on the first album.
I love my mama very much. Now you know that.
But the writing of the songs was done by the entire band. Well, Lee Kerslake wasn't really involved in all the writing. They actually had a different drummer early on whose name escapes me when they were rehearsing. But when Lee Kerslake came in, he contributed writing to the hidden gem No Bone Movies.
Yeah, that's a weird one.
Yeah, it's probably one of the weaker songs on the album. But the album ends really strong with Revelation Mother Earth and Steal Away the Night.
And the band was supposed to be called Blizzard of Oz, but they changed it. I read a few reasons why, and I'm not sure what to believe. They printed his name too large on the cover, so they decided it was Ozzy. I don't know.
There are early concert flyers that you see from England in early 81, no, 80, late 80, where they have them billed for concerts as Blizzard of Oz or Ozzy Osbourne's Blizzard of Oz. So, it was supposed to be, according to Daisley and Lee Kerslake, it was supposed to be a band. It was supposed to be Blizzard of Oz. It was supposed to be the name of the band.
And from what I understand, Don Arden, the manager, Sharon's dad, wanted to call it Son of Sabbath. I mean, Ozzy's
Really?
like, no.
Yeah, no, that would have been South probably would have had a problem with that too. But the album obviously just grew and grew and grew in popularity. It was not, despite Crazy Train being everywhere, still to this day, it was not a top 40 hit of any note, and really no singles. It wasn't a singles band, it was an album. This was from front to back, track 1 to track 9, I guess it is, was all just unbelievable songs that you could still listen to the album from front to back. And this week I was listening to his whole discography basically.
Yeah, same.
And you know what my favorite part of this album is?
Oh, what's that?
I mean, I'll make it this week. It's this part. Next week you could ask me, it'll be a different part. But in "Steal Away the Night," the last song on the album, after the first chorus, "Steal away," whatever, and does the first chorus. After that goes into like the main riff before the second verse. There's like 6 seconds from like 45 seconds to 51 seconds in that song that just are the best part of the album. It makes the hairs on my arm stand up.
You're going to have to send me that 6-second clip later so I can see what you're talking about.
I will. Everyone listen to it. I even wrote down that those were the seconds. Those are the actual seconds, 45 seconds to 51 seconds. Right before the second verse of "Steal Away the Night." Trust me. Plus, I'm so sick of listening to Crazy Train, so I had to focus on other parts of the album.
And like Rob was saying, this didn't really have any singles, but it's still, 1997, it went quadruple platinum. Then it went 5 times platinum in 2019.
Can't go to a sporting event without hearing Crazy Train. It's become the song probably most associated with him. It's, you look at charts, like they have all kinds of, information online. And even when people were downloading iTunes, it was like the number 5 most downloaded rock song in 2012. I mean, that's 32 years after it came out.
And it's not like they call Ozzy the Prince of Darkness and the Madman, and he's all dark and mysterious. But his songs aren't like that. Like Crazy Train is just a great, happy, kind of galloping song. It's
Learn
awesome.
how to love and forget how to hate.
Yes.
Goodbye to Romance. He's got a song about saving the environment, Revelation, Mother Earth. So it's not all doom and gloom from this
and
Prince of Darkness.
And Revelations, from a guitarist's point of view, man, that solo is just, it is intense. I learned how to play it, and it's hard, but it's just listening to it. It's insane. It's just so aggressive and brutal and in your face.
And that's the epic longest song on the album. When they first toured for this album, they did pretty much every song on here has live versions available online that you could find. And some songs, like Crazy Train, I don't know. They basically, Mr. Crowley stayed in his set lists forever. The same band that recorded Blizzard of Oz also recorded Diary of a Madman.
Don't let the picture fool you.
Yeah, don't let the inside fool you. But he had been touring briefly with Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley, but then by 81, got rid of Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley, replaced them with Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge. And they had done the whole Blizzard of Oz tour in America with Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge. So when they came out with Diary of a Madman, like Craig just mentioned, the picture on the inside shows that Rudy Sarzo and Tommy Aldridge played on it, but they did not.
Yeah, that's pretty crappy.
And lawsuits followed in decades afterwards about who wrote what songs.
Pretty much with every record.
Yeah. But this one was again written by Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley and Randy Rhoads along with Ozzy. So it was a group effort, even though it wasn't really portrayed as such. What do you think of these 2 album covers, Blizzard of Oz and Diary of a Madman?
I think they're awesome, actually. They're so iconic and they're so well done. They'd be albums that if I didn't know Ozzy, I'd buy them. Like we said, we used to judge by the cover. Although Diary of a Madman creeped me out a little bit because I was a kid and you're like, oh my God, it's an upside down cross.
Yeah.
Now it's just like, Ozzy was never into that. He just knew marketing. He knew that was his thing.
Yeah. He, the first album cover I remember seeing as a young kid, and that scared me a little bit more. I think I knew the second one was a little more cartoonish by then, but the first one, him holding the cross sort of bent over on the ground, I thought, man, that guy's evil. I even freaked out because he had Ozzy on his knuckles. I don't know why. I thought that was very strange for back then, but that obviously was very well known as a feature of Ozzy's. But he toured nonstop for these albums. Yeah. And even though he replaced Lee Kerslake and Bob Daisley with Sarzo and Aldridge. It just, if you look up his tour dates, just never stopped all through 81 into 82. He actually, there's a famous video that Craig and I were watching. It's probably a lot of people have seen it. It's the best footage of Randy Rhoads playing along with Ozzy. It's in a studio. In a studio. It's actually recorded in a television studio in Rochester, New York on April 28th, 1981. And believe it or not, Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo had only played 3 or 4 shows with Ozzy up until that point. So it's a very early view of the Blizzard of Oz touring lineup in 1981.
As a kid, when I first saw those videos, it was, I went out of my head. As a kid, I was a fanatic of Randy Rhoads. Still am, but you know how you are when you're a teen. And there was the only footage you ever saw of Randy Rhoads was pictures in a magazine, or if you went to the flea market and they had bootleg photographs you could buy.
Right.
There really were no videos. There was no internet. So you saw what was out there. And I had never even seen him move because those were the days. And then I saw this video and we were freaking out like, oh my God, that's really him. That was cool.
Yeah. So now on YouTube, you could see the whole thing. Ozzy's actually interviewed by whatever TV station it is up in Rochester, and they play. And what my takeaway from rewatching it this week is how happy Ozzy looked. He just looking around at the other members of the band and constantly smiling. He seemed to really enjoy the guys he was playing with. He seemed to be impressed, looking over and watching Randy a lot during it. They had, he's gone through so many members. They showed a clip of a second of the keyboard player playing the intro to Mr. Crowley. And I was like, that's not Don Airey. Don Airey had played the keyboards on Blizzard of Oz. It was actually a guy named Lindsey Bridgewater.
These names, they're awesome.
Do you have any Lindsey Bridgewater posters on your wall?
No.
Just Randy?
No Rod Smallwood, Fleming Rasmussen. All these names, they're awesome.
Derek Smalls.
Our names are boring.
Yeah, they sure are. So now, while this band is continuously touring, I mean, he basically goes from the Blizzard of Oz tour to the Diary of a Madman tour right after Diary of a Madman comes out. So now by early 82, they're touring for Diary of a Madman until the fateful day in March of 82.
Yeah, right in the tour. It was about a week before the Madison Square Garden show. They're in Florida, and I don't know why, but the guy who took them out early in the morning.
He was actually that tour bus driver who had a pilot license.
And he wanted to buzz the bus just to mess with everybody. Buzz it. You fly really low, so you shake it and everything. He did it. I think he went up with someone else first.
I think Tommy and Rudy were in the first flight.
Then he came back and picked up Randy and their makeup artist, Rachel Youngblood. And he misjudged it. One of the wings hit the bus. The plane careened into a house. And Randy and everyone, the other two, Pilot and Rachel, were killed. And it was awful. I mean, what a tragedy. Everybody basically saw it. Like Rudy said he saw the wreckage, and Ozzy was devastated. I mean, how do you see that? Yeah,
it's one thing to lose a friend, but to see it happen is like right in front of your eyes is just unimaginable horror.
Yeah. I mean,
but as is the story for most of his career, he picks up pretty quickly after that. I mean, I think it was March 19th, right, that Randy died?
Yeah.
By April 1st, he already played another show at the Memorial Hall in Allentown, Pennsylvania. That was the first show after Randy's death, and it's only about 2 weeks later.
Mm-hmm.
He also, in between Randy's death and that show, he actually appeared on David Letterman. So if you go on YouTube, you see an interview of Ozzy in 1982 on David Letterman. He talks about like Randy dying. I wanted to carry on, and they have a new guitar player, and they're picking up the tour again.
Yeah, which I remember that now.
I guess some people may have seen as sort of heartless, but people always react one of two ways. It's either take some time off, reevaluate, go away for a year, or just plow through.
Everyone takes tragedy differently. You can't judge. Some people close up, and some people need to take their mind off it and just do something.
Yeah.
And that's how I think he coped. I mean, if he didn't go back on tour, he may have just went back into the bottle.
Yeah.
So this is a good thing, and it doesn't take anything away from his compassion or anything.
And as the story goes, there were a bunch of people that were considered to replace Randy, but the record company Jet Records in England had already decided on this guy Bernie Torme, and they
how you say it.
sent him to America. strongly considered was actually Rudy Sarzo's brother.
Yeah, he was supposed to be in the band.
Yeah.
But the commitment to Bernie came first.
And Bernie Tormey did not last. He played, I don't know how many shows. I don't know if you looked it up. A couple of weeks, he played. But after, obviously, they got Brad Gillis, we'll get to in a second. But unfortunately, that was the end of Randy Rhoads' musical output. So whether it was bootlegs or buying those pictures at the flea market or people just desperately trying to find anything Randy, they focused on old Quiet Riot recordings. Mm-hmm. They looked for any live bootlegs of anything Randy. And there was actually a couple of songs that weren't on either of the first two albums. There was a song called You Looking at Me, Looking at You.
Yeah.
And there was another one called You Said It All that were B-sides of singles. And so people were able to, seek those out. I remember it was a big deal the first time I heard You Looking at Me, Looking at You. I was like recording it off the radio.
I remember seeing it was an import or something about Randy Rhoads. It was all those songs. And, they weren't that good. I could say it. They're not. That's why they were B-sides, right. I would think.
So the show must go on, and it does. And it's still the Diary of a Madman tour when Brad Gillis replaces Bernie Tormey, and they go on and eventually have to record a live album. Ozzy wants to get out of his Jet Records contract. He owes them a third record. He's originally going to do a live album with Randy of his solo material, but then decides to come out with Speak of the Devil.
Yes, he does. No one wanted to do that record. The band, it was almost like a mutiny, like especially Randy and Aldridge. They were like, why are we going to do this? We're solo artists now. Why are we going to cover Black Sabbath? And it was bad. Like it almost came to blows.
Yeah, I didn't even know if I realized that was the plan before Randy passed. I don't even know if I realized that.
Yeah, and Randy they were all angry, and that's when Ozzy really started not getting along with Randy because a lot of friction. It didn't go away. But, he had commitments. He had to come out with a live album.
Yeah. It would have been a lot cooler if it had been he does it later on in the 80s with the tribute live album, but that's not until about 87. But it would have been cool if it had come out at that time as a live album of Blizzard and Diary of a Madman songs.
Yeah, it would have. Like you said, it came out later, and we had to get our live Randy from other places because apparently, well, I don't want to say Sharon, but I'm going to say apparently Sharon didn't want to release it, and she still doesn't. I don't know, whatever.
So the touring continues. They tour all through 1982. The tour name ends up changing to the Speak of the Devil tour once the Speak of the Devil album comes out. Craig and I have talked on previous episodes about our actually love for Speak of the Devil, despite the band not really wanting to do it. It was really my introduction and Craig's introduction to a lot of Black Sabbath songs we didn't know, whether it was Symptoms of the Universe or Never Say Die. There was a lot of, I loved Tommy Aldridge's playing on it. So Speak of the Devil was a good one. And it's got another interesting cover with Ozzy. I guess that's Jello, I guess, coming out of his
I don't know.
It's supposed to be guts or something.
I don't know, but it's an interesting cover.
Recorded live at the Ritz in New York, September 26th, 27th, 82.
And yeah, I didn't know about any of those Sabbath songs, but man, I think it's maybe that Brad Gillis and the boys put a lot more energy into it than a typical Sabbath song. Like you listen to this, then play the Sabbath songs on this and listen to the originals. These are they make you want to get up and throw things.
It definitely is an intense performance, and Brad Gillis definitely plays differently than Tony Iommi. Tommy Aldridge had a lot of double bass accents and rhythms that maybe Bill Ward didn't have on the originals. So it Speak of the Devil spoke to us as young metalheads.
It did. It was a different era too. So yeah. I'm saying that's probably the reason why I was all like guitar influence, and if you didn't play fast, then you weren't good.
Right.
And you were probably that way with drums, the flashier and the double bass and all that stuff.
He's twirling the sticks. Wow. So 82, Speak of the Devil. They keep going. Brad Gillis leaves. And then the Speak of the Devil tour ends with yet another guitar player who is going to be with him for quite a few years. And that is
Jake E. Lee.
We talked about on an episode back in January or February episode, how Jake E. Lee actually joined at the tail end of the Speak of the Devil tour and played out the string of ending those dates until like February of 83. Then they took a break for a few months, and they famously appeared at the US Festival. And we talked in our Us Festival episode about Ozzy's set and how he's in the middle of the day, and he's probably bigger and more legendary than some of the bands that came after him on that day. But he had a set of Jakey Lee. It wasn't Jakey Lee's first show, but it was the first time that we saw Jakey Lee watching the Us Festival special on cable.
That was a fun episode. If you haven't listened to it, go check it out. Do it! We watched the whole thing and we kind of talk about it. It was fun.
Yes, it was. So that is the lineup in 1983, and that lineup with Bob Daisley back. And I'm always surprised how often Bob Daisley comes back.
They have so many problems with each other, but he keeps coming back.
He co-writes all the songs on Blizzard and Diary. He unceremoniously gets kicked out. Then they don't give him credit for even playing bass, much less songwriting on Diary of a Madman. But yet he comes back to the album the lineup that will record Ozzy's next album, Bark at the Moon.
That's a recurring theme, it seems, with Ozzy's bands. They don't give credit to anyone. I mean, even on Blizzard of Oz, Sharon said she wasn't happy with the creative input of Randy and the boys. And it's like, it is always that happens, and then people have to go to lawsuits, and then they sue, and then years later, Ozzy says, okay, they really did write the songs.
Well, Ozzy kind of became the heavy metal Elvis or Sinatra, neither of whom wrote songs, and Sinatra was fine with that. Elvis, on the other hand, I don't know if you know the story, but whenever people wrote songs for Elvis, his manager, Colonel Parker, made them sign over half of the writing and publishing to Elvis. So Elvis would be listed as a co-writer on a song that he didn't actually have anything to do with. So that was maybe the industry standard that was set. So now I have to be honest with you, I was only 13, but when I got Bark at the Moon in late 83 and inside it said all music and lyrics by Ozzy Osbourne, I actually laughed. Because
it's very hard to believe.
I was like, okay, he wrote the riff to Bark at the Moon. He wrote the intro to Rock and Roll Rebel.
He wrote Crazy Train. Diary of a Madman. He wrote that guitar line.
Yeah, he did all the piano for Revelation Mother Earth. So Bark at the Moon comes out, and this was the first album that I bought new. It came out in the store, and I went and got it. I had different ways of listening to Blizzard and Diary of a Madman, but I did not buy those albums new. But I bought Bark at the Moon new and loved it.
It was me too. I loved it. It was, I think we were in 7th grade at the time.
Yeah, or 8th.
7th or 8th. I don't know. It's all the same. But it was a kick-ass album. The thing with Ozzy albums, the first songs are always bangers. He just like, bam. Look at Over the Mountain. I don't know. It just kind of soothes in. And then bam. And then Bark at the Moon, it's just bam.
It's funny you say that because when I was listening to the discography this week, I just had all the studio albums on one playlist, and Steal Away the Night ends on Blizzard of Oz. Bam. And then Over the Mountain starts. It's funny to hear the albums go into each other. And then at the end of Diary of a Madman with the dramatic chanting, and that ends. And right after Diary of a Madman ends, you hear Bark at the Moon start. So it's really cool to hear all the openers right after the closers of the previous albums.
Yeah, it's really cool. And the guitar work, Jakey Lee, I mean, he's just really good. He's got some cool stuff going on that record. Although I didn't like this album as much as the previous two. I mean, that's probably obvious because the previous two are just perfect.
It's so hard to pick. I think probably because I'm sick of hearing I don't know. And Crazy Train, I might go with Diary of a Madman as the best of the first three.
I think so too.
But I loved Bark at the Moon. By this point, he stopped playing a lot of songs on albums. He'd do like 14, 15 song set lists. He'd have to have Paranoid in there. Obviously, Crazy Train was a must play. I Don't Know was a must play. Flying High Again. So by Bark at the Moon, there's a lot of good songs in here that I don't think he's ever played live. You're No Different. Now You See It, Now You Don't. Waiting for Darkness I loved, which closes the album. Slow Down.
Waiting for Darkness, I wanted to bring that up. That guitar riff in the beginning, whatever. That riff in the beginning, it always reminds me of like a soundtrack of an 80s movie where they're like kids or teenagers and they're doing something important and trying to get away from someone or running. It sounds like a great
Escape
80s
music.
Yeah, like the background music.
Escaping from a guy who has turned into a wolf and is barking at the moon.
That would work.
And they're trying to run away from him.
How did you think of that?
What's funny about this is after Bark at the Moon, I just mentioned all these other good songs. His next single and video off this was So Tired, which was just him standing like in a theater singing this, I don't know, ELO sounding ballad about, I'm so tired.
Is that where the mirror exploded and he got hurt?
I remember.
One of the videos, it was some ballad.
But this album gave us Jake E. Lee, brought Bob Daisley back in. It's the only studio album that Tommy Aldridge actually did play on.
Although in the video, it's Carmine Appice.
Who actually, after the recording, Tommy Aldridge was out, Carmine Appice was in. He was in the Bark at the Moon video, and then he did the European tour with them at the end of '83, and then they didn't like him. So he was selling shirts. He wanted to sell shirts of his own, like where Ozzy had the merch. He wanted Carmine Appice shirts.
Wasn't he trying to sell fake mustaches?
I don't know.
No, I'm kidding. He's known for his mustache.
So he was out, and guess who came back for the Bark at the Moon tour in '84?
Aldridge?
Tommy Aldridge. And one of our young co-hosts, his first concert was the Bark at the Moon tour. Tell us about it.
I'm going to tell you about it. It was Bark the Moon. That was my first concert ever. And I was like either 7th or 8th grade. So you could imagine how freaking exciting that was. So we went with a friend of ours and his older brother, he drove and he had his other kid with him. But, oh, wow, there's nothing like the electricity when you go to a concert and then he has that crazy music that comes on before he comes out. It's like all evil sounding. Yeah, that was awesome, man.
And that Bark at the Moon tour can be seen on, there was like an MTV concert filmed in Utah, I think, Salt Lake City of all places, where it's got the giant staircase and Tommy Aldridge's drums are on the top of the staircase. And that's the Bark at the Moon tour, well documented in an MTV concert. And obviously, like everything else we talk about, you could find that on YouTube.
And just seeing Jake E. Lee running around as a guitar player, watching him run around on stage, he was just so cool and he looked cool because that was the day you had to look the part. That the long black hair and all the bandanas and the white strat. It was like one of those guys you're like, that's what I want to do. I want to be that guy.
Yeah, I love like the riff to Rock and Roll Rebel, little solos at the beginning. He plays over the riff. You know what bothered me listening to the discography this week? It's Jake and it's Randy. Is so many of Ozzy's songs fade while they're still soloing. Rock and Roll Rebel made me think of how it's fading and Jake is still soloing. So then I went back and listened to the first two albums, and there's Mr. Crowley, Can't Kill Rock and Roll, Believer kind of, Little Dolls, and the song Tonight. All those songs are fading as Randy is soloing. Terrible. So like as it's getting lower, I'm turning the volume up higher to try to hear, like you wish they would come out with a remix of some kind. I want to hear the master track until they stopped playing. Let the solo go.
We have a friend, Joe, he's a really good guitar player.
I know exactly what you're going to say.
Yep. His favorite solo is the outro solo of Tonight.
Yep.
And he was telling me it's famously known that the engineer really hated fading that song out. He said that's some of the best guitar work he's ever heard, and he had to fade it out. Like you say, I wish we had the master, we could just keep the volume up.
And the same Joe that you're talking about, he mentioned to me that as it's fading out and he's soloing, he starts doing something with a toggle switch, I guess.
Yeah.
It's a Les Paul, I guess, at the top, that switch. He starts going on and off with it, and you hear it in the solo as it's fading. I actually wrote that in my notes. I don't know if it's blasphemy to mention Dio on an Ozzy episode, but they remixed Holy Diver. And besides adding more like bottom end, what the guy did on the remastering version is you actually hear some songs. You hear like the 4 count on the hi-hat. And the guy plays the songs until the band stops, a couple of them. So you hear like Rainbow in the Dark and some other songs that fade on the album. On this remaster, he just lets it go until the band stops playing. And I would love to hear that.
Oh, my God.
On the early Ozzy albums.
Yeah, that would be unbelievable. And by the way, the thing you say he does with the toggle, what you do is you take the neck pickup, you turn the volume all the way down.
Okay.
So when you go back and forth, it kind of then it's on. Then it cuts it, then it's on. It's pretty cool.
See that? I didn't know the technical aspect of it. I just know you guitar players were impressed with that.
You could buy a Les Paul, you could do that now.
There you go. I did know it was the Les Paul, though. So now we're at Bark at the Moon, and that tour ends, and Ozzy keeps a guitar player. But as no surprise, there's other band changes, and there's other names that are thrown about. I'm just going to keep to the names of people who either played live or played on a studio album. So while there are other people's names thrown about in 85, 86, by the time Ultimate Sin comes out, Jakey Lee on guitar, a new drummer, Randy Castillo, and a new bass player, Phil Soussan. And the Ultimate Sin comes out.
In this album, Jake refused to play anything on there until he got an ironclad contract because he got no songwriting credits whatsoever on Bark the Moon. Sharon actually threatened him, saying, if you don't sign the contract, signing over all the credits, we'll just hire someone else and have them re-record your parts.
Which is foreshadowing for something that would happen much later, but she drove a hard bargain.
Yeah.
So now this lineup is all established for this album. Phil Soussan is actually the guy who brought the song Shot in the Dark to the band. There's even controversy if he actually wrote that. Some members of his old band say that they co-wrote it with him, but Shot in the Dark becomes the big hit, the big video off the Ultimate Sin. And what'd you think of the Ultimate Sin?
It was okay. Going back and listening to them, I remember I didn't like it as much as the previous ones, and I still don't. I think it's kind of weak. I don't know why. I don't like the mix and production of it. It seems kind of dead. It's kind of just blah.
And if we could talk about that for a second, is it the guy Max Norman again?
I don't know.
So many of their albums, the first three especially, were Max Norman produced and engineered, and some of them don't sound good. As great as Blizzard of Oz is, Blizzard of Oz doesn't sound that great. Diary sounds better than Blizzard of Oz.
Yeah, Blizzard was a little more raw, I guess.
But I agree with you about Ultimate Sin. I actually probably liked it more than you did at the time.
Yes,
but in retrospect, when you put it between Bark at the Moon, forget about, not to mention the first two, but between Bark at the Moon and Even No Rest for the Wicked, it just sounds weak. It's of its time, I guess. The way there's a lot of effect on things.
Yeah, it was
there's
dead
keyboards
sounding.
but it did well. I mean, Ozzy had a bunch of videos. He did a huge tour. Craig and I saw Ozzy together on this tour with Metallica opening up.
And then with Queensryche.
I didn't see that one. Yeah, that was the second time he came around. It's so weird to think these bands used to tour so much. They would come around. Like, we live outside of New York, so we don't really miss many tours, but every band would come around twice.
Yeah.
You could see like everybody twice on every tour because they'd start near us or end near us. So yeah, we saw Ozzy and Metallica in April, and I think by September, October in the fall, Ozzy came around again with Queensryche.
And that's something we mentioned in the past, is that Ozzy just took people on tour. He wasn't afraid of how good they were. Like, some people only take bands who are lesser than them. I mean, look at this right here. He took Metallica, then he took Queensryche. Those aren't some cheap little bands.
No.
You know what I mean?
And the only reason I didn't go to that, and I wish I would have, because that was Queensryche on Rage for Order tour, which is like one of my favorite albums of all time. But like a day or two before at Nassau Coliseum, AC/DC played. It was AC/DC and Loudness. So I had to pick one, I guess, and I chose AC/DC and Loudness because I guess I had already seen Ozzy
MZA.
on that tour. MZA, baby. So that's the Ultimate Sin, which is very successful for Ozzy. I mean, all these albums go double, triple, quadruple platinum. His biggest seller of the 80s was the first one, I think, right? With 4 million or something.
I believe
million.
So. Probably Crazy Train that brought that over the edge.
Not the 80s, but his second best-selling album was actually No More Tears.
That's a great album, though.
Yeah, it is.
And on this one, the song Secret Loser. You ever see the movie The Wraith? It's an 80s movie with Charlie Sheen. He gets murdered. He's a ghost, comes back in a ghost racing car, and seeks vengeance. Secret Loser's in that. Every time I watch that movie, I hear Secret Loser. I'm like, yeah, it's Ozzy.
Hey, Ozzy, getting a little soundtrack
Just a little
work.
tip for everyone.
But yeah, that album, I mean, it had some okay songs. Never Know Why, Thank God for the Bomb. Killer Giants was cool.
I didn't like Thank God for the Bomb at
I remember
all.
at the concert, Thank God for the Bomb. It actually sounds like he's singing it like flat or off key or something. But
I hate that chorus.
Thank God for the Bomb, right. But every time he said it, there would be a flame explosion near us. And I remember feeling the heat from the explosions on that song
even
live.
as a kid, I hate is a strong word, but the chorus is just, I hate it.
The way he says the word bomb is
Thank
definitely.
God for the bomb. It annoyed me.
So Ozzy now finishes the Ultimate Sin tour, and I mean it's so funny because the one Ozzy that became known later on through reality shows and things, kind of showed him as a stumbling, bumbling, lovable sort of old man, but this guy toured through the 80s. I actually did the math, if you believe it or not. I went to setlist.fm and you could click on different tours and it tells you how many shows they played. So I added up all the shows from all the tours in the 80s. How many shows do you think he played just in the 1980s?
181.
679. Every tour was about 100 something. So he did 679 shows as far as the internet can tell me. The first 2 shows they ever did with the Blizzard of Oz, they actually did it under a secret name in a small place. They called themselves The Law. The first 2 shows. And so 679 shows, 2 as The Law. But before The Ultimate Sin came out, he actually did 1 show with Black Sabbath in the 80s. He was Live Aid.
Oh, yes. Okay, that's
Live
what I
Aid.
read. Yeah.
Yeah, Live Aid. So Black Sabbath played at Live Aid. They actually played at the Philadelphia location. Remember, Live Aid had Wembley Stadium in London, JFK Stadium in Philadelphia. And he did 1 show as a member of Black Sabbath at Live Aid. They went on at 10 a.m. And I looked it up. You know who went on before them? Billy Ocean.
I was going to say Wasted again.
No. It was all mainstream. They mostly mainstream bands at the time. So it was Billy Ocean, then Black Sabbath, and then Run DMC right after them.
That makes sense.
That makes total sense to go from Paranoid and Children of the Grave right into Run DMC doing the King of Rock.
Oh, yeah.
So that was Ozzy's touring for the 1980s. But we're not done with the studio albums. There's still one more album of the 1980s.
They weren't going to rest at all because there was no rest for the wicked.
And this is yet another variation of a lineup.
We have the ultimate Zakk Wylde. He's the new guitar player. They actually had like a nationwide search for a guitar player.
Yeah, and we remember, that this was like, Ozzy's looking for a new guitar player. Ozzy's looking for a new guitar player.
All over Metal Shop.
So, he was looking in Los Angeles. He's probably looking in London. And then us living in the outskirts of New York City, we heard, oh, Ozzy's coming to this club to check out this guitar player. Ozzy's in New Jersey checking out that, guitar player. But he actually did check out a bunch of tapes, and one of them was from a kid from New Jersey.
Yeah.
Zakk Wylde.
He was a great addition. I mean, this guy, he could play, and he's like super aggressive. His style is just aggressive and just rip your face off. He
was young. He had the long blonde hair down to his waist. He could play a Les Paul, even played one similar to Randy's. And he was a bit of a squealer. He liked Brad Gillis was the bar. He was a little bit more of the squealer.
Back then it was cool, but now a lot of people want to get over that.
But he, along with Ozzy and, believe it or not, Bob Daisley, did the songwriting for the album No Rest for the Wicked. He kept the drummer, Randy Castillo. So Randy Castillo survived The Ultimate Sin into No Rest for the Wicked with Zakk, with Bob Daisley, and they come out with this album, which opens with a banger, Miracle
As
Man.
Usual.
Yeah.
And, if you listen to them in order, what I was saying about Ultimate Sin being kind of dead, this one starts, and my first thought was, now we're talking. Now we're back to the original Ozzy. The mix was great. The energy is right there. I love this one.
The lyrics are great. The video is great. Him poking fun at Jimmy Swaggart, who
Miracle Man.
Yeah, who stood on his high horse criticizing Ozzy and then was caught doing all kinds of illegal things. But Miracle Man, I actually liked this album, and listening to it this week, I was reminded why I liked it. Crazy Babies, Breaking All the Rules, Demon Alcohol. There's a lot of good songs on here.
I even wrote down, this album is back to the old Ozzy, very rockin'.
You should have wrote the advertisements for back then.
That's a pretty catchy slogan. This album is back to the old Ozzy. And one of the songs on there I really like, I don't think it's one of their singles, one of their known ones, but Fire in the Sky.
Yeah, that's a good one.
It's, when it comes on, it's like, it's different than the whole record. It seems like, it almost reminds me of a Randy. Like Randy could have wrote that in a way. It's more bluesy. I like it a lot.
I do too, yeah. That's I guess towards the end of the album, I think. Fire in the Sky. So we're giving our recommendations. We're giving 2 thumbs up to No Rest for the Wicked.
Yeah, 2 thumbs up and 1 bat's head.
I saw him on that tour. Anthrax opened, keeping the history of having great openers. Anthrax was on the State of Euphoria tour, I think. That was like December of 88. So Ozzy tours 88 into 89 on the No Rest for the Wicked tour. And the last concert that he plays in the 80s is in, of all places, Moscow, Russia, where he, along with all the other big bands at the time, went and did the Moscow Music Peace Festival in Moscow. It was organized by Doc McGee, who may or may not have been paying penance for being a drug dealer. So he had to do this charity concert over in Russia. Motley Crue was there. Scorpions were there. Bon Jovi was there. Cinderella, Skid Row. I think that's everybody with Ozzy. And you obviously could see those concerts on YouTube as well. I remember getting it on pay-per-view and watching it at my house.
That was a big deal back then.
Yeah, ordering it on pay-per-view, having people over to watch the Moscow Music Peace Festival.
And you can see the videos of them all sitting on the plane.
Yeah.
You can see Bon Jovi and then there's Ozzy, and it's just wild.
There was a little documentary about that where they were supposed to be promoting sober living, and then the plane was loaded with alcohol and drugs. And I remember listening to like Dave the Snake Sabo had some hilarious clips on there talking about, hey, how do all the drugs and alcohol get on this plane? But whatever the message was, however they were behaving, it's a great musical moment, and you can check that out on YouTube. That's Ozzy's last concert of the 1980s, from going as the Law in the early Blizzard of Oz shows to the end, playing a giant stadium in Moscow, Russia. That was Ozzy live in the 80s.
Definitely one of the hardest working men in rock and roll. And keep in mind, too, what he was going through with his drinking and everything, and he still did it. He may have woken up drunk, but he woke up and he did it.
Yes.
He persevered. A lot of us wouldn't have done that with a hangover.
And Craig and I were planning this episode out. We said, everyone's going to know about the Bat. Everyone's going to know about the Dove. Everyone knows about the Alamo. And yes, it's part of his story. Yes, it's part of the 80s. But so much of what's said about him is about those things and not about the 5 great studio albums. We barely even touched on the live album, Speak the Devil, we talked about a little bit, but he came out with another live album with Randy called Tribute, which is a big success, and the first time officially live recordings were released with Randy. So the output is unbelievable. He even appeared in a couple of movies during the 80s.
Yeah, a lot of people don't give him credit, but he was a really smart guy. He had a speech problem, and what, he had Parkinson's?
Well, towards the end, yeah.
And people thought, oh, he's fried. But no, he was a smart guy. You don't survive and get to where you are by being stupid. Yes, Sharon helped a lot, and she was very good at what she did. And but Ozzy knew what he wanted. He was smart.
Even if he didn't write every lyric, even if he didn't write the guitar riffs, he oversaw these projects that obviously resulted in amazing, legendary music.
He delegated.
And there is a long list of, I actually wrote down every person who played on an album or played a live show with him. I'm not going to read it all, but he had 4 different drummers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 bass players, because actually we didn't mention Geezer Butler actually comes back and plays bass live on the Norris for the Wicked tour after Daisley leaves again. He had 5 guitar players, and he had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different keyboard players that at least appeared on a recording or at a live show. So,
yeah,
that's the Ozzy universe.
And he's come a long way since working in a car factory horn tuner.
You actually have to tune car horns?
Apparently so. In his autobiography, he talks about that. And then he worked at a slaughterhouse and he got arrested.
Well,
John Michael Osbourne. What a life.
What a life. And sadly, he left us a year ago on July 22nd, 2025. It's one of those rock star passings that I am going to remember where I was. I remember where I was for Neil Peart and Eddie Van Halen. And I remember last summer ripping up a deck in my backyard and one of my sons coming out and saying, Dad, Ozzy Osbourne died. And I said, no way. And the thing that is always haunting to me, and the way that I verify it, is I put the radio on and I switched through 3 different New York radio stations.
If they're playing songs?
94.3 The Shark on Long Island, WBB on Long Island, and then Q104.3. And they were all playing Mama, I'm Coming Home at the same time as I was changing stations. And I went, oh, he really is dead.
Because he wasn't a rock star. He was like a staple of music. It goes beyond being heavy metal, beyond a rock star. He's just part of our culture, really.
And it's, of course, it was only 3 weeks after the legendary Back to the Beginning Sabbath Ozzy concert at Wembley Stadium, I believe, or no, Birmingham Stadium. I forget where it was. But anyway, it was in England. And so it was a good send-off, that concert that was just a year ago. Something else you can go and watch this week on the anniversary of Ozzy Osbourne's death.
Nice.
I thank you. The audience thanks you. Ozzy Osbourne thanks you. And we thank you for listening to our Ozzy in the 1980s episode. We'll get back to our normal format of covering different months and different albums of 1983, but we could not let this pass without paying tribute to the Prince of Darkness.
Thank you, good night, we love you all!
Thanks for listening. Be sure to follow us on Instagram at the 80s Metal Hang,
That's 80S.
where you can see photos in our weekly episode scrapbook.
We also have a YouTube channel with video playlists that pair with each episode.
And on Spotify, we have playlists highlighting the albums and songs discussed each week.
And please be sure to subscribe and comment wherever you get this podcast.
Oh, yeah.